On September 18, 1946, a lone U.S. Army medical team slipped into the cramped courtyard of a Guatemalan prison, brandishing syringes instead of shackles, and began a covert campaign that would infect thousands of men, women, and children with syphilis, gonorrhea, and chancroid, all without a single informed consent. The Guatemala Syphilis Experiments, a dark chapter hidden for decades, stand as a stark reminder of how scientific ambition can become a weapon of cruelty when ethics are discarded. In the aftermath of World War II, the United States sought to perfect treatments for sexually transmitted diseases that had ravaged troops in the Pacific. Penicillin, still a miracle drug, promised to curb the spread of syphilis, yet researchers needed to understand its efficacy in real-world conditions. Dr. John C. Cutting, a leading venereal disease specialist at the U.S. Public Health Service, was tasked with designing a series of studies that would simulate natural infection, monitor disease progression, and test prophylactic regimens. Rather than recruiting volunteers, the project's architects turned to the most vulnerable populations: prisoners, mental institution patients, soldiers stationed at a U.S. base in Guatemala, and even impoverished sex workers, people whose voices could be silenced by the prevailing power structures of the time. Between 1946 and 1948, the team, operating under the cover of the Guatemala Syphilis Study, inoculated an estimated 3,000 individuals. Some received direct injections of syphilis, gonorrhea, or chancroid. Others were exposed by allowing infected sex workers to have intercourse with them, while a small subset was merely observed after being exposed to contaminated blood. The researchers meticulously recorded infection rates, symptom onset, and the effects of various dosages of penicillin, all while keeping the subjects in the dark. Consent forms never existed, and the prisoners and patients were never told they were being used as living laboratories. In many cases, the infected were left untreated, allowed to suffer the full progression of the disease, or given sub-therapeutic doses that merely prolonged their misery. The ethical breach was not merely a matter of omission. It was an active deception. Researchers forged medical records to mask the true nature of the interventions, and local physicians were coerced into participating or turning a blind eye. The U.S. Army's presence in Guatemala, under the guise of a post-war cooperation agreement, provided the perfect veil of authority. The Guatemalan Ministry of Health, eager for American aid and modern medical infrastructure, signed off on the study without scrutinizing its methods. As a result, the experiment unfolded across multiple sites, from the grim wards of Hospital General de la Policia to the overcrowded cells of the San Carlos prison, creating a web of infection that rippled through families and communities long after the study concluded. The truth remained buried until 2010, when a declassified Department of State memorandum surfaced, revealing the scope of the atrocities. The revelation sparked a global outcry, prompting the U.S. government to issue a formal apology in 2010, followed by an additional apology in 2015 after further documentation emerged. However, the legal reckoning was limited. No criminal prosecutions were pursued. Instead, the U.S. Congress established the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, which, while primarily focused on nuclear research, also examined the Guatemala case as part of a broader reckoning with past abuses. The committee's report acknowledged that the experiments violated the Nuremberg Code and the emerging principles of informed consent, yet the victims received only symbolic recognition and, in some instances, modest compensation through a later settlement fund. Autopsy reports from the period provide a chilling forensic chronicle of the damage inflicted. Pathologists, working under the direction of U.S. physicians, performed post-mortem examinations on dozens of subjects who had succumbed to the diseases or to complications such as neurosyphilis, cardiovascular collapse, and secondary infections. Tissue samples revealed extensive spiritual infiltration in the brain, heart valves riddled with inflammatory lesions, and widespread ulcerations in the genital tracts. These findings, once meant to validate the study's scientific hypotheses, now serve as stark evidence of the human cost of unchecked experimentation. The autopsies also exposed a grim irony. While penicillin was hailed as a wonder cure, many participants never received the drug in adequate doses, turning a potential life-saving intervention into a tool of deliberate suffering. In the decades that followed, the Guatemala Syphilis Experiments reshaped the landscape of medical research ethics. The scandal reinforced the necessity of institutional review boards, tightened international guidelines such as the Declaration of Helsinki, and underscored the imperative that vulnerable populations be protected rather than exploited. Contemporary scholars continue to debate the adequacy of the U.S. response, questioning whether apologies and modest reparations suffice for the scale of the violation. The legacy endures in the stories of survivors and their descendants, who grapple with the physical scars of infection and the psychological burden of betrayal by institutions that were supposed to heal. The Guatemala Syphilis Experiments remind us that the pursuit of knowledge, when divorced from conscience, can become a weapon of oppression. As we uncover more hidden histories, we must remain vigilant, ensuring that every clinical trial is anchored in respect for autonomy, beneficence, and justice. Only then can the medical community honor its oath to do no harm, even as it strives to push the boundaries of science. Subscribe to the Autopsy Files for more medical history stories.